Prabhu's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just remember Nilesh and I started recording for him.
That's fine. So yeah, that definition of karma, as the cycle. So basically, this is like when one performs one duty that gets him. Let me see, what is the actual? Okay, when one does his own duty according to the revealed scripture. So it's not necessarily just the typical karma understanding that we hear about. I guess that the karma that we hear, karma includes all that, right? The karma, vikarma, and akarma. That's all part of it. Is that a
Karma
proper
and
one?
vikarma could be part of what we generally know as karma, yes,
Yeah,
but not
yeah.
akarma.
No,
Akarma is freedom from karma. Yeah,
you're right. You're right. Okay, yeah, that's what I meant. I just needed a clarification on that one. Thank you.
yeah. So the verse is saying one may aspire to live for hundreds of years. Shatam samaha. Shatam samaha is 100 years. One may aspire to live for hundreds of years, not just 100, but for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on working in that way. What's that way? It's the previous verse, right? Which says to see that everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme, and that I do not covet somebody else's property. Magridakasya Suddhanam. And I accept that which is allocated for me for my service unto the Supreme. So if one lives in that consciousness, then they are a not a liability, but an asset to the world. Otherwise, if there is this mentality of encroachment, of taking someone else's property, of trying to push our selfish agendas forward, then actually one's presence on the planet is not a benefit, is actually a liability for the planet. So if one lives that way, then you can go on working in that way and you don't get bound by karma. It's interesting, Prabhupada ends the translation with there's no alternative to this way for man. The Sanskrit is evam tvai nanyate tosti. That you can't be free. You can't really circumvent God consciousness to be free from karma. Vrinda, you have your hand up? Did I lose her? Did we lose her?
Can you hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I said that I had a question about the last sentence in the first paragraph, where it
Mhm.
says, if he does not act according to his prescribed duties, he transgresses the law of nature and binds himself more and more to the cycle of birth and death in many species of life.
Mhm. Mhm.
I guess I just wanted a little more understanding into what like these prescribed duties are that if we don't follow, we're just caught more and more in this cycle.
It's a great question. Let me see if I can find a scriptural explanation of that. Just one second. All right, I found it. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So it is Bhagavad Gita 247, perhaps the most famous verse of Bhagavad Gita there is. Um, it's not the most important verse, I would say, but it's the most famous verse. In India, most people know this verse because they think that Bhagavad Gita means, or the message of Bhagavad Gita is do your duty. That's the message. No, not exactly just do your duty. It's karmanyevadhikaraste. Yes, do your duty. And then there's three things that go along with it. Ma phaleshu kadachana, that don't ever consider yourself the owner or the proprietor of the result of your work. Don't ever think you're the cause of the phala, of the result of your work. Don't think you made it happen. And don't ever be attached to not doing your work. So all three are features of what it means to actually do your prescribed duties. So the explanation is given here. There are three considerations in the purport: prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. So Prabhupada explains here what prescribed duties are. Prescribed duties are activities that's based on one's acquired modes of nature. Okay. So this is further explained in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that those that have more the mode of goodness nature, they engage in Brahmanical activity, teaching and performing religious ceremonies, worshiping the deity, studying the scriptures, studying philosophy like that. That's all astrology, helping people with, being a therapist is a mode of goodness nature. It's a Brahmanical. So these are all Brahmanical occupations. So based on your modes of nature that influence you pick an occupation. That's the prescribed duty. Capricious work means actions without um, the sanction of authority, and inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. So now further on, as far as prescribed duties are concerned, they can be fitted into three subdivisions, namely routine work, emergency work, and desired activities. Or you could say desired activities are like, um, what's the word? Gosh, I'm forgetting the word now, the English word for it. But desired actually is kind of like your discretionary. There you go, discretionary activities. So we have routine work. We got to go to school. We got to go to work, whatever our routine work is. Then there's emergency work. There's stuff that we've got to do out of, somebody called me this afternoon while I was chanting my, no, evening when I was chanting my japa and said, we've got to fix this thing with Eventbrite on for the BMS registration, the Body Mind Spirit registration retreat. So it was an emergency. I had to stop what I was doing to take care of that. And then desired activities is discretionary activities like recreation, going for walks, keeping our health in good shape, keeping family peaceful by doing family and social related activities, etc. Routine work performed as an obligation in terms of scriptural inductions without a desire for the results is action in the mode of goodness. So, more about what these routine work will be is given in chapter 18, text 42 through 42, something 43, 44, like that. Talks about based on the modes of nature, you have Brahmanical activity. Based, if you have mode of passion that's more within you, you do Kshatriya activity like an administration kind of role, a leader kind of role, a managerial kind of role, etc. So hopefully that clears it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And so we're supposed to act according to those duties then, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
It's important to know our nature ultimately and be able to live by it. And there's especially if we're younger, like yourself, we're at pivotal junctures of our life to make the right choices that align with our modes of nature that impact us or influence us. So, all right, anything else? Prabhupada starts the purport with something really strong. He says, no one wants to die, everyone wants to live as long as he can drag on. Has anyone had that experience around you or yourself? I'll give you guys two examples, recent ones, and that's why it really spoke to me when I read it this time. When my dad passed away in November, we had the choice to make the choice to take him off a feeding tube and things like that. And for the family that made that choice, it was remarkably unanimous, and we were all aligned about the decision to pull the plug. There's a cousin of my mom whose father-in-law, so my mom's cousin's father-in-law, we're talking about the guy was 99 years old, 99, in the hospital, and he was on a ventilator. And it was really, really difficult for that family to say, okay, let's just take him off the ventilator. This is not moving forward. They couldn't. I mean, they just couldn't make the decision to remove the ventilator. There was another devotee-ish family in the north side of Chicago. The husband was in coma for 20 years. 20 years. I don't know what life support system he had, but he was on some kind of life support system. And when they finally pulled him off the life support system, it was the toughest decision for the family. And the wife was still in deep grief, very pain situation. Another example is my mom's another cousin. Her husband had some kind of, I think he had some kind of cancer, throat or something. And he was in a comatose state on a ventilator for 7 months. The family just couldn't give the person up. The person was, the family was completely drained of all their finances, trying to keep medical, they use it in ICU for that very long time. So you see this tendency that no one wants to die, and people around us don't want us to die, and we want everyone to live as long as we can drag on, when in reality, the body is perishable and the body will expire. There's an expiry date on it. But we just have this natural inclination. The question that one can ask is, why? If the body is so temporary, perishable, fragile, at any moment it can just like break down, why do we have such a strong will to live? Why is it so hard to give up the body? It fills us with fear and confusion. And so the point that Prabhupada's making is because we have such a strong will to live, it should indicate to us that we have an eternal nature that's deep within us, and dying is just not natural. It's very unnatural for us. And so like I said, when we start the meditation today, there's a softness in our heart that seems so incompatible with the harshness of reality outside of ourselves, right? In this world that we live in. Like that, there's this strong desire to be eternal because we are eternal. And it's completely incompatible with the fact that we're in a temporary material environment. It's like a fish being out of water. So a practice of yoga, a practice of bhakti yoga and mantra meditation is to experience that eternality even within the realm of temporality. Any reflections on that? Anyone have that kind of experience like I was sharing from?
I had similar in 2020 when my mom was sick. She had had a massive stroke, and it wasn't her first stroke, and um, she ended up on life support, so
Mm,
feeding tube and all of that. And I was the power of attorney for her. So
Oh,
I had already, by the time that she was sent to Rush up in Chicago, um, I had already established like a do not resuscitate. So like had she had something else while um, in that condition while we were waiting for final reports on what does her recovery and stuff look like do not resuscitate. But then when it came time to actually making the final decisions, it was her family. So she's one of five. She was the first sibling to pass. So my aunts and uncles, but they were all very torn. And I still feel like this disconnect with a lot of her siblings where they were not on board with me making the decision to let her
mhm.
go.
Mm.
Um, but I, it is an interesting concept, especially with the advancements of the medical world, and it's the whole quantity versus quality of life debate and all of those things. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that struggle of the temporary body with the eternal soul, and it's not natural uh, to face death.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I believe like as human beings, we're attached to the body of the person. When it comes to making those tough decisions, we can't think about the eternality of the soul because I had gone through similar
Mm.
experience with my dad when my dad was really sick and he was on life support and my mom was like totally torn like and very tired in terms of taking care of him and we had like nurses around the clock. And we had that conversation, but the family was like, who are we to let them go? They're gonna go when it's their time. So I mean it's like it's tough to take that decision in your own hands when there's still life.
It is for sure. In end of life care, one of the very important things that, actually, without end of life care, one of the important things to have is a living will, and everyone should have one. And at least, if not in written form, at least in verbal form, to let those who are likely going to be around your degrading body to know what your desire is. Like for my dad, we knew that he wouldn't want stuff plugged into his stomach to try to feed him in a very degraded or quality, low form of quality of life. So to have that ahead of time is really nice. So then you're clear about the decision. This is what that person would want. And the thing with life support system though is it's an artificial keeping a person alive kind of situation. And it's not necessarily when you take it off, you're not taking away another person's life. You're simply not doing something artificial is what it is. At least that's how I see it.
I think the
Um,
key here is their quality of life.
mhm,
And if there is no quality of life, then you're just artificially, prolonging the suffering.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
I
you
can't
see
imagine. Oh,
go ahead,
I
Lina.
was I was gonna say I can't imagine being the family of someone who was in a coma for 20 years and having that. So to your point about knowing someone's wishes, in the case of my mom, I knew her wishes. She did not want to be ventilated. She did not. She was and I knew like having listened to the doctor, she had a 20% recovery rate. There was another blood clot in her like behind her heart waiting to just
Oh, gosh.
throw another clot. So like all of the factors, but and then knowing her will, but yeah, it I also agreed with what is the purpose of keeping her here in a physical form when clearly this body is not meant to continue housing her soul. Like it's but it doesn't make the decision any easier.
It doesn't. And especially if you don't have alignment and collaborative decision making, that's easy. It makes
Hmm.
the decision really hard. And then, you get judged for it naturally.
Yep.
My mom knew what my dad wanted, but she couldn't make the decision. As soon as she got wind of the fact that there may be a hard decision to make here, as soon as she did that, because she kept telling me, don't come, don't come, don't come. As soon as she got wind that it is going to be a hard decision to make, at that point, she said, I can't make that decision. And she said, you please come. I took a flight that night. Later on, we discussed it. And one of the things that was hard for her to make a decision, even though she knew my dad's desires, was that how people would judge her for it post um, post the event. Our fear of judgment really makes us not necessarily make the right decision sometimes, but it's a very real thing that we are moved by what society may say about our decisions in life. I had no idea we'd go into this topic. But Verinda, you want to pick the next person? Let's move on.
Sure. Sumataji, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, Vrinda. Hare Krishna. The instructions of Sri Isopanishad are more elaborately explained in the Bhagavad Gita, sometimes called the Gitopanishad, the cream of all Upanishads. In the Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead says that one cannot attain the state of Naiskarmaya or Akarma without executing the prescribed duties mentioned in the Vedic literature. This literature can regulate the working energy of a human being in such a way that he can gradually realize the authority of the Supreme Being. When he realizes the authority of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva or Krishna, it is to be understood that he has attained the stage of positive knowledge. In this purified stage, the modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, cannot act, and he is able to work on the basis of Naiskarmaya. Such work does not bind one to the cycle of birth and death.
Did you do one more part?
Sure. Factually, no one has to do anything more than render devotional service to the Lord. However, in the lower stages of life, one cannot immediately adopt the activities of devotional service, nor can one completely stop fruitive work. A conditioned soul is accustomed to working for sense gratification, for his own selfish interest, immediate or extended. An ordinary man works for his own sense enjoyment, and when this principle of sense enjoyment is extended to include his society, nation, or humanity in general, it assumes various attractive names such as altruism, socialism, communism, nationalism, and humanitarianism. These isms are currently very attractive forms of karma bandhana, karmic bondage. But the Vedic instructions of Sri Ishopanishad is that if one actually wants to live for any of the above isms, he should make them God-centered. There is no harm in becoming a family man or an altruist, a socialist, a communist, a nationalist, are humanitarian, provided that one executes his activities in relation with Isavasya, the God-centered conception.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay. Any comments?
I'm struggling with, and I haven't really thought about it enough, so please bear with me. But this last little bit, there is no harm in becoming a family man, an altruist, a socialist, a communist, a nationalist, a humanitarian, provided that you do it with a God-centered conception.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the ones I'm struggling to understand with that is socialist, communist, nationalist.
Mm.
How can you become those things and keep it God centered without also still just becoming entangled in the material world and not engaging in the divide of politics and everything else? Especially maybe the nationalist one.
Okay. Yeah. There's this concept of spiritual communism. Have you read that in the Bhagavatam?
I have not, or at least it's not, I'm not remembering it.
Okay. Um, Prabhupada speaks about spiritual communism. I think it's in the preface of the Bhagavatam. And let me see if I can bring it up. Just give me a second here. Okay. Let me share my screen here. Do you see it?
Yes.
So right here in the beginning of the preface of the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada makes the statement that human society is no longer bound by the geographical limits of particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than the Middle Ages, and the world tendencies towards one state or one humanity, human society. The ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. So, from a spiritual communism standpoint, is to see all living entities as connected to Krishna, connected to God, and therefore that everyone has a right to live. And everyone, for example, making sure that plants are taken care of is living in spiritual communism. Your question was more around nationalism, which is, yeah, how do we be a nationalist and be a spiritual nationalist? Because being a nationalist itself is limited to a bodily identification, which negates spirituality. I think that's the tussle you're having in
Yes.
your mind. And the, one can be a nationalist in the sense that you care for everything within your nation, seeing it as part of God's entity, but not with envy to another's nation. A modern or materialistic nationalist is one, I love my country and I hate others.
Hmm.
A spiritual nationalist, I love my country and others too. So it's this more, you don't have necessarily the capacity to think of every other country, but it's not that you have an envy towards it. And whoever is within this country, be it plants, animals, or human beings in this particular country, that you offer service to that category of entities, and therefore you're being a nationalist. You care about your nationalist means you care about the nation. And you care about the rivers, you care about the environment, you care about the mountains, you care about, let me offer some service to preserve all of these things, the ecology of the nation, uh, etc. The holy sites of the nation, whatever the holy sites might be. But it's free from envy. That's the point. Generally, when we
That
like
makes
something,
sense.
means we don't like something else. That's not spiritual.
That makes sense. I've
Okay,
never thought
cool.
about nationalism in that way because it's always
Mhm.
the
Yes,
America first kind of concept.
yes.
But not, yeah. Okay.
But I was going to say regarding this topic, I don't know, some kind of psychologist or philosopher was saying something about this, the different, he was just making an observation about nationalism, communism, socialism, um, and basically, all these ideas that, they only work in a perfect world. So I think that's what Prabhupada is talking about, that unless we're in this perfect society and we see all as living entities and we see each other as living entities, we see God in the center, like none of these models will work, right? So in one sense you can say that democracy is a little bit better because most countries are adopting this right now, right? This is more functional, but is it necessarily can it really lead someone to pure happiness unless it's God centered? I guess that's
Yeah, it's the
my
God-centeredness that gives you the happiness. It's not the fact that you're engaging in altruism
yeah
or
yeah.
humanitarianism. That may be your meeting your psychophysical nature, that you appreciate feeding the poor or whatever your thing is. Um, but it's the God-centeredness that really gives satisfaction to the soul.
Mm.
And whatever you do, educate spiritual topics or feed the poor or Habitat for Humanity, clean the Yamuna River, whatever your thing is, as long as that God-centeredness is there, that's the happiness. And then we're all unique, we're all different, we're all inspired to serve Krishna in different ways. Okay. So would you like to pick the next person? We'll complete the booklet.
Mataji, would you like to read, please?
So,
Sure. God-centered activities are evaluated in the Bhagavad Gita as being so rich that even a little bit of them can save one from the greatest danger. The greatest danger of life is to glide down again into the evolutionary cycle of birth and death. If some way or other a man misses the spiritual opportunity offered by his human form of life and thus glides down again into the evolutionary cycle, it must be considered the most regrettable incident. Although foolish man cannot see this due to his defective senses. Sri Isopanisad advises us, therefore, to exert energy in the Isavasya spirit, and in that engagement we may wish to live for many, many years. Otherwise, one's long life is no better than that of a tree, which is also a living being and which lives for hundreds and hundreds of years. There is no point in living a long time like the trees, or breathing like the bellows, or begetting children like the hog and the dog, or eating like the camel.
mm,
Even a humble life with God-centered activities is more valuable than the colossal hoax of so-called altruism or socialism without any relation to God. When activities such as altruism are executed in the spirit of Sri Ishopanishad, every one of them becomes a form of karma yoga. as is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. And that guarantees the executor against the dangers of the evolutionary process of birth and death. Such God-centered activities, even though half-finished, are still good for the executor because they will guarantee him the human form of life in his next birth. In this way, he can have another chance to improve his position on the path of liberation. Thank you.
Can you finish the last? Almost done.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, you don't have any more?
For verse 2, that's it.
Your book has a different version.
I also realize that many times when people are reading, it's the same sentence, but it's
Said different way.
twisted.
So
Yeah.
I
I
wonder
got
which
this
one.
from Gita Nagari.
That book doesn't have the edits in it, I think. Okay, so we'll finish reading it here. So how one can execute God-centered activities is elaborately explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. We have rendered this book into English as the Nectar of Devotion. We recommend this valuable book to all who are interested in performing the activities in the spirit of Sri Isopanisad. Nectar of Devotion is being advertised here. I think it's an excellent book to learn and read. Okay. Any final thoughts or comments? Not final, means any thoughts from this final section? So whenever I've read this book with others, a statement that has always surfaced as, wow, that's a pretty strong statement. And remember every time I remember Ishopanishad, I remember the statement, is where Prabhupada writes here, a humble God-centered life is more valuable than a colossal hoax of a life dedicated to godless altruism or socialism. Did you all feel similarly? It's pretty strong, but very well said. It's you. Okay, no other comment. Let's do some breakout rooms and do some takeaways. Oh, overly
feel
chatty group today. Okay.
I feel like this one sat heavy. It just there was a lot of different things covered in it, and then our conversation, and then just the different ways in which you could take it. So it's just a lot to digest. I don't know if anyone else feels different.
Well, Kishore had a good question in our group. I don't know. if he wants to share it, but if he feels comfortable.
I just joined late, so I wanted to understand what the translation means, the second part of translation, where it says, "For that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma.
Mm.
There is no alternative to this way for man." So, but Sojan and Prabhu explained that part one is connected to this, where the mantra one, where we learned about how to not how to be satisfied with what we have, but like also not be jealous or look into other people's quota. Um, if we live by that mentality, even if we live for 100 of years, it will be more meaningful, like
Mhm.
towards your spiritual goals.
You'll be free of karma. If you live without the God conception, which is presented in text one, which is Isha principle, if you live without that understanding or without that realization, then you will be incurring karma at every step of the way. And to be free of karma, there's no alternative to this for man. Prabhupada is explaining that Ishavasya conception that's explained in Mantra 1 is the way to be free of karma. And there's no other alternative to be free of karma, which is to have the God-centered conception, is to invite Krishna into the home of your heart. Like really invite him, not superficially, but deeply, genuinely. Open the door of your heart and say, please come in. That is a ticket to be free of karma completely. That makes sense?
It does.
Okay. Okay. Anything else before we end for tonight? One last thought, comment? Okay. Sounds like a little morbid discussion today, huh? Forgive me. At one time, I remember I was in St. Louis. I used to give the Sunday feast talks. This is when I was much younger. And one lady, she told me at the end of the talk, said, why do you always have like a morbid talk? Like it's always this thing. Like, "Oh, okay, thank you." Anyways, I'm sensing today was a little bit morbid.
I wouldn't say morbid. I think they're the good conversations to have because it takes the concept of death and brings it to the reality of it.
Mhm.
And it's one thing, again, we've said it before, but it's one thing to know, yeah, we're all going to die, but then to actually talk about it and the reality of it.
Yeah, and it's not something we're comfortable talking about. So that's where the word morbid even comes from, right? We talk about something that's a reality, but it's don't even talk about it. Yeah,
Hmm.
the other day somebody asked me how you doing. I said, "Hey, look at me, I'm still alive." You speak like that? No, no, always speak auspicious things, auspicious thing. Like, I am alive. Isn't that auspicious? So just the idea of that was insinuated by my comment that I'm still alive was uncomfortable. And this is a devotee who's been practicing for 10 years, 15 years. Interesting, no? Yeah. Okay. Well, wish you all a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you next week, same time, same channel. And Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.